Well, wouldn't you know, it be yet another episode of Portland's podcast. Excellent. Take it away, lad.
And one. Hey folks, we're here once more in the Portland Media Center as we enter the second half of Season 2 of Between the Piers. Hoping everyone's summer has been full of memories and a heck of a lot of fun. Mine certainly has been. Today I have a really exciting announcement. For the first time in Between the Piers, I am not entirely doing this on my own. Following the Rebel fishing lore incident with Griffin Williams Sherry, I realized that having a live fact checker and maybe some more production value as I attempt to grow this podcast would be a super valuable thing. So, for the first time, I would like to introduce Tyrone Payne. He's going to be my producer. He's going to be joining me for this episode and hopefully many more to check any facts and claims in real time and to help me produce a better podcast for you wonderful folks of Portland and beyond. And checking facts in real time might be a necessity with how much history we're going to be checking in today's episode, or we're going to be talking about in today's episode. Today, I am joined by the one, the only, Matt Bray, a purveyor of one of the most niche hobbies that most people have heard of a time or two, Civil War Re-enacting. Matt is the captain, or the president, in layman's terms, of the 3rd Maine Infantry, Maine's largest unit of Civil War reenactors. The 3rd Maine travels all over to national historical battlefields to partake in reenactments of the very real battles that happened in those very spots by the Union and Confederacy. Matt, how are you today?
Doing great, man. Really happy to be here with you.
Absolutely. It is also a crying shame that currently Between the Piers has no video capabilities. This is something we are planning on addressing in Season 3, so stay tuned, because Matt absolutely brought a couple of, are those kepis or forage caps?
So one of each, as a matter of fact.
But, yeah, very cool.
That's okay. You don't need me on camera anyway. I'd just break it. But,
yep.
Brought a couple of different examples of some headgear, and we could talk about that and all the different gear that we have.
Excellent. And that's absolutely iconic. Also, just so I'm looking the part too, just give me 1 second here. Just sure that I'm on top of things.
Oh, you got your own. That looks great.
There we go.
Company B, 20th Maine.
The 20th of Maine. Yes. I am also wearing a forage cap as we speak. Yep, this is a forage cap of the 20th of Maine. So I guess that's a pretty good place to start. I had Griffin Williams Sherry on the podcast. He sang the Ballad of the 20th of Maine. So what do you know about the 20th?
Yeah, sure. The 20th Maine was obviously a very famous Civil War regiment from the state. It was formed in 1862, so it was the second year of the war. Still all volunteers at that point. The draft had not been instituted, so these were all still volunteers, citizen soldiers, if you will, that joined. There were companies that were raised from multiple different towns, not just one geographic area, as similar earlier in the war. They were under the command of a gentleman named Adelbert Ames. He ended up becoming a general later in the war, a very, very solid officer. And his second in command was Joshua Chamberlain, my hometown of Brunswick. Yep. So
Lion of Bowdoin.
Yep, another Bowdoin soldier, which actually there were quite a few. Bowdoin sent a ton of soldiers to the Civil War and from Maine. So Joshua Chamberlain obviously was their colonel. The 20th Maine was a great regiment that fought obviously at the Battle of Gettysburg, which was made very famous by the film and the book The Killer Angels, but also very famous for fighting in multiple other battles through 1864. And famously at the Battle of Petersburg as well. So the 20th Maine, very, very strong, pride of the state for sure, but one of 32 regiments that the state sent to the war.
Wow.
Yep.
You only really hear about 2. You
Correct.
hear about the 3rd and the 20th.
Yeah. So when the war began, the call for soldiers was to Maine was for 5 regiments. The Maine state legislature immediately passed a law called the 10 Regiments Law. And the 10 Regiments Law instituted enough funds to raise 10 regiments of infantry to send to the war effort.
Wow.
The first 5 that were made were the 1st Maine, the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th.
Yep.
The 1st Maine was a 90-day regiment, meaning they were only signed up for 3 months' worth of service. As soon as that 3 months ended, almost all of the members then rejoined what would become the 10th Maine. That was the 10th regiment out of the 10 regiment number. They would re-enlist and then fight in the 10th Maine and then later re-enlist again. The 2nd and 3rd Maine were 2 different groups. A lot of them were comprised of groups from the Volunteer Maine Militia. And the Volunteer Maine Militia had existed since the War of 1812.
Okay.
Soldiers that were citizens, they were involved in town. They might have been shop owners or business owners. This was a gentleman's club as much as it was a military organization.
Okay.
But something that they participated in. They were the first call to answer the call for volunteers.
Yep.
The 2nd Maine was an interesting case. Some of the members of the 2nd Maine ended up joining the 20th Maine.
Oh, really?
It's made very famous by the book Killer Angels again and in the movie Gettysburg. There was a lot of confusion about the term of enlistment. Some of the men signed up assuming they were signing up for 90 days, just like the 1st Maine was. Others signed 2-year contract papers, while yet even more signed a 3rd-year term.
Oh, wow.
So it was very confusing. It caused lots of problems. As you can imagine, raising a citizen army at the time of the American Civil War without computers was very, very difficult. So lots of confusion. The 3rd Maine, who we represent as a reenacting group, was the first 3-year regiment. So they were the first that signed up as a 3-year regiment. Their first company, Company A, who we represent, came from the city of Bath. They were a militia group, the Bath City Greys. The rest came from towns up and along the Kennebec River Valley.
Oh, so like all the way from Gardiner, Waterville, Augusta.
Absolutely. Yep.
Wow.
Absolutely. So raised all from there. They were commanded by Oliver Otis Howard, Howard University, if you're familiar with that. That was named after Oliver Otis Howard. Was a semi-famous officer before the war. He was a teacher at West Point and a mathematics instructor.
Oh, wow.
And he came back to Maine to command Maine's first 3-year regiment, which was formed and mustered in Augusta and left Maine on June 5th, 1861.
Wow. I can't even believe, I'm sorry, I just completely, West Point had a mathematics division?
So you have to understand, when you're talking about, especially for artillery, you need to understand angles, geometry, but it was also a college. It was to teach there was a literature program at West Point, one of the best colleges in the country during the time.
No doubt. Absolutely. Yeah. And some of the best generals within the Civil War came out of West Point.
For sure.
Grant, I believe Grant went to West Point.
Grant absolutely went to West Point, North and South. And that's one of the most compelling stories, I think, about the American Civil War for historians and for amateur historians, as they find out later, that a lot of these guys knew each other very personally. They were close friends. They may have married. They may have been in-laws, married each other's sisters and brothers. Different connections there as well, which is really, really fascinating. And I think that it's what I think 2026 still ties us to the American Civil War's history.
Mm-hmm.
It's because we can relate to that. We understand that, knowing what it was like fighting against. It's not some foreign enemy in some field or some jungle. It is it's people that you know.
It's it could be just people across state lines.
Exactly right, or close friends or even family.
Yeah,
exactly
and
right.
that's kind of the deeper power of the Civil War in particular, right? Because in World War I, the Great War, and World War II, there was kind of this the enemy is over there. Right, and we're all uniting against the enemy over there. When with the Civil War, it was like all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now the enemy's domestic, right, and it just becomes that much more heartbreaking. And I think that's why when you look at the numbers, right, the mortality rate in the Civil War is the highest of any American conflict ever, because both sides were American.
That's right. And it really ties together, I think, a lot of the reasons why they fought. And I think that's another question that we get asked as reenactors a lot. And honestly, we can't answer it. Honestly, we can give you our educated guesses as historians.
Yep.
And we can tell you what the soldiers wrote home. Some soldiers could really care less about slavery, or some soldiers could care less about the Union and only care about slavery, or only care about the Union.
Yep.
In the Confederacy, you might be fighting just to stop an invasionary force, and that's the reason why you wanted to fight. The reasons are different. What's been interesting in being a historian of Maine Civil War soldiers is seeing kind of the scope of how active Maine was in the American Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
Per capita, the state sent more than any other state in the Union to the American Civil War.
We did?
Maine did. And there's some reasons for that. My personal research has led me to believe that a lot of it is tied to the fact that Maine was still a fairly new state. Become a state in 1820.
Yep.
So only 40 years had the state existed, and they wanted to prove that they were just as much part of the Union as Pennsylvania.
That was when we seceded from Massachusetts, right?
Correct. Yep. Correct. The District of Maine became the state of Maine in 1820.
The District of Maine.
District of Maine, which I think is still a cool name.
District of Maine.
The Civil War soldier from Maine was very steadfastly devout to the cause and to being a soldier.
Yep.
Later in the war, more would sign on. Obviously, when the draft came, and some would be basically take bounties to be replacements or to sign up for money. And of course, some, I'm sure, earlier in the war signed up for bounties as well. But it seemed, based on the quality of soldier, the 20th Maine and the 3rd Maine and the 17th Maine, the 16th Maine is a very famous regiment from the Battle of Gettysburg.
Oh, really?
They stood and fought to the very last.
Yep.
They stood and held a position until they were going to be overrun, took their colors, cut them up, and gave each man a piece of the colors, so that way they wouldn't be captured. That's how steadfastly they believed in their cause. They weren't just there because they were told to or for money to then just go home and stay safe. They were there to go win the war, and I think that that's something as Mainers we should be very proud of. And that's a big piece of the history of why what we do to keep that alive is to remind folks of that sacrifice and dedication that the Mainers did for that incredible period of time.
That's incredible. I was speaking to like I had mentioned, I was speaking to Griffin William Sherry of the Ghost of Paul Revere, formerly, and he wrote the Ballad of the 20th Maine, right, which is now Maine State Ballad. And he said, and he made a claim that if it weren't for Chamberlain's involvement in the Battle of Little Round Top, it's likely that the Union would have been overrun in that area, and there was nothing between Gettysburg and D.C. at that point.
Yeah, it would have been a severe challenge, certainly for the Union Army to recover had they been able to take that portion of the battlefield. Without boring your audience to death. If you go to Gettysburg, you could see it. Little Round Top is at the very southern end of the battlefield. The Gettysburg was a little bit unique because the North came from the south in Gettysburg. They were coming from Virginia.
Oh, wow.
And Lee was coming from the north. He had gone all the way up to Harrisburg almost and then was working his way back south.
Was that due to Sherman's march to the sea, or am I thinking two completely different
Sherman's
times?
march to the sea was a year later, so that was a different thing. But it was another idea that they were essentially moving in an invasionary force. The Confederacy invaded the North. The reason why I bring that up, yes, of course, the 20th Maine had a monumental part of that battle. But what's so funny, and I encourage all your listeners to check it out. It's a series of videos and a website called Maine at Gettysburg. It's now also called Dirigo History. If you haven't seen it, Dan Lambert is the one that does these films.
Prior to you walking in, we watched your episode on it.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, Dan Lambert is superb. So if your listeners are interested in this stuff, again, you just Google or YouTube Maine at Gettysburg. You can find out about all the different regiments there. But yep, that's absolutely true. The 20th Maine held a portion of the hill against an attack that had almost worn itself out, but hadn't quite yet. And had they caved and run, as the Union Army had so many times before, 1863, the entire line could have easily collapsed for sure.
Wow!
So a big day for Maine there. Right below them, the 4th Maine was fighting in what was called the Devil's Den. And the Peach Orchard was where the 3rd Maine was fighting, and next to that was the Wheat Field where the 17th Maine was fighting.
So Maine was locked in
all
the
over
Battle
the place
of
on that same day, which is the second day of the Battle of Gettysburg. So again, check that out. Again, Dan Lambert and Lambert Films, superb work, and you'll get to see some living history. You'll also get some great commentary from unbelievably knowledgeable historians about Maine Civil War history.
Living history is such an incredible thing, and I've been trying to get into living history more just because I used to be an actor. I was a theater kid in high school, and I just kind of never lost that. And I always felt more comfortable in a costume than I do in my normal clothes. So living history has always been something that I've tried to find avenues into, and I'm just glad that living history is a thing, and I'm glad that these organizations exist that preserve these historical times, because these are really important times.
For sure.
These are really, really important times in our history, right? And I don't think that people understand that until they're in it. You know what I mean? I think that's why people find Civil War reenactments so interesting, right? Because they can see it. They can smell the gunpowder. They can hear the cannons going off. They're not insulated in a boring classroom with a picture of Robert E. Lee that's been laminated, and the laminated picture of Lee on the wall, right? Sure. It's real to them. They can see it happening. And I think that's the value of Civil War reenactments, right? So,
I think so. I think that, I've been reenacting since 1999, so it's, it's my 27th year. I think everybody gets a little something different out of it, and that's certainly a piece. I think that if it does nothing else, it helps humanize this thing that was in history, which is such for me, such an impactful piece, because if we just read about it, or it's just a name, or it's a number, the 20th Maine, it's not human. It becomes human once you get to see, touch, and feel the idea behind it. And I think that's a big piece of what living historians do everywhere, whether it's reenacting or anything else.
Absolutely. So we talk about the 3rd Maine, the 20th Maine, and all these Maine regiments. What was the general age of some of the soldiers that were going into those battles?
Great question. Yeah, the average age was 20 years old for a Maine State soldier. There were some, obviously, that were older. The oldest 3rd Maine soldier that I've come across was 44. He was drafted in 1863. The end of the draft age was 45, so a 44-year-old man then was an old man.
That's
certainly
tough.
The youngest soldier that we have verified record of his age in the 3rd Maine was 15. He received permission from his father to join, listing his age as 18 on his enlistment forms. We have the signed documentation of his actual birth date, so we know that he was 15 years old. So ages spanned, greatly. The Maine soldier came from all sorts of different walks of life. In the 3rd Maine, in particular, lots of lumbermen and machinists working in the different mills along the Kennebec Valley, and obviously in Bath, a lot were shipbuilders.
Yes.
So there's a big piece of that. But it was literally everybody. I mean, it was business owners, it was shopkeepers, it was lawyers, it was doctors, it was farm hands, it was people who never had any employment whatsoever.
Yeah.
It was certainly a unifier for sure in a lot of ways, and everybody had to pitch in.
Yeah, that's something too, right? This kid was 15 years old, right? He wouldn't even have been. Would he have been a high schooler?
Yeah, maybe I guess. Yeah, 15. Yeah,
15. Freshman
year,
in high school, and it was so important to him to preserve the Union that he got his dad's permission to fight.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I don't know if have you watched the movie? This isn't a Civil War movie, but have you watched the movie All Quiet on the Western Front?
Oh yeah, great.
Like absolutely. Like he wanted that. He wanted to go into that battle,
sure.
which is remarkable.
Which goes back to the question of why did they fight, right?
Right.
And again, for some it was a cause. It was to end slavery, or it was to preserve the Union.
Yep.
For others, just the greatest adventure they could ever imagine.
Absolutely.
A chance to go experience something you never experienced. Working on a farm in Fairfield, Maine. It's a very different experience.
Yeah, can you imagine being 15 and getting the opportunity to I don't know, it's just something
to march. When the 3rd Maine arrived in New York City, they marched through Broadway to a throng of tens of thousands of people, and being celebrated and cheered. Hey, could you imagine that for anybody from Maine? Let alone a 15-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Definitely an incredible period of time for these individuals, and lots of memories from that. The writing bears that out. The history that we have from them is heavy earlier in the war. Lots of letters, lots of correspondences to local papers. They were very, very excited to tell their story. As the war went on, the war became terrible. It was very, very hard. And,
yeah.
I literally don't know how anybody survived it. Having experienced it for weekends at a time, I don't know how soldiers survived. They were a different breed of people.
Yeah.
Definitely things changed, and you could see that bore out in the letters and the types of communications, and being excited to be in some new camp somewhere was less exciting when it was your 5th camp and you'd already camped there before and you fought that day over a battlefield that you fought on a year ago.
Yep, and you're getting eaten by bugs, and it's really hot, and you're wearing wool, right? Because I understand the Union and the Confederates also wore wool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Wool was an extremely versatile fabric. It's durable. It generally does well in wet. It doesn't shrink.
Right.
And it, for the most part, will wick moisture, which generally helps. The problem is it's very, very hot.
Oh yeah.
So that's the one experience I can say as reenactors that we have shared with the Civil War soldiers before us, as being in heat. 2 weeks ago, now maybe 3 weeks ago, we were at the 163rd anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg reenactment.
Oh wow!
It was the week where the heat wave was here.
Nice. Yeah, the really, really bad one.
104 degrees in the field at Gettysburg.
And you're in wool?
In wool the whole weekend.
Yeah.
It was brutal. Brutal. I mean, absolutely. You just, imagining that you could never get out of that heat. You'd be in that heat for another year is just incredible. And, that's another piece, I think, as a reenactor, that we get a taste of. We'll never know. Like, no one will ever really know what it's like to be in those battle lines, and, seeing your comrades die around you in huge, huge numbers. We'll never know. But we get a taste of that experience by immersing ourselves in that type of world. In other events, we'll camp with nothing but our blanket on our back, no tents. We'll only eat period food. We'll march through streams and up hills and do all those things that they did, and get a taste. And I think that's a piece of the hobby, that reenacting, that is unique, I think, to the experience, in terms of I'm doing something that I enjoy, but I'm also learning and getting something out of this from an experiential standpoint, which is really, really cool. It's kind of a 2 birds, 1 stone thing.
Absolutely. And it makes the hobby that much more real, right? Because you experience what it was really like versus what is ideally like, right? Like, it'd be cool to put on the uniform and like experience these things, but like when you're hiking up a mountain in wool and it's like 95 degrees and humid and you're getting bitten by mosquitoes because you just traversed a swamp and your feet are all wet, it becomes that much more like, you become that much more dedicated to the cause.
For sure. And I think it gives us some pride too. And, it's fascinating because as reenactors, we've almost, built our own little mini history, because we've been doing this for so long.
Sure.
That, again, it's a taste of kind of how they had that same camaraderie, those same stories. Remember that time when this was so bad, and we made that through it together. There's a piece of that too, which is kind of cool.
Absolutely.
But of course, never to the extent what these soldiers actually did. And I think that's very important to, for folks to remember is, they'll see us out there and they'll see, having a battle reenactment and guys pretending to be dead and stuff. We do it to honor them. We do it for their memory. We do it to give folks some sort of taste of that, not just out there playing cowboys and Indians. And I think that's a major thing that is very important to us to communicate that you may not know if you're just driving by or you stop by a Civil War reenactment. It's I encourage folks that do attend to talk to reenactors, learn why they do this, understand what history they have to share. Everybody's got a story, whether it be the 3rd or the 20th or some other regiment from some other state. Everybody's got stories, and it's really cool.
Absolutely. Do you know, by any chance, this is a bit of a segue, do you know about the cannonball in the Colesworthy building on Exchange Street?
I don't. No, that's a cool story.
So there is a cannonball embedded in a building right here on Exchange Street.
Okay.
And the original, I learned this from a former podcast guest, shout out to Dugan Murphy of Portland in Town Contra. I learned that the cannonball they thought was from the shelling of Portland in I think the Revolutionary War. It's actually a cannonball that was used in the Battle of the Wilderness.
Really interesting.
In Virginia.
Yeah.
And had no place in Portland and was put into the wall by hand.
Interesting. A lot of Maine soldiers died at the Battle of the Wilderness, so it was maybe a tribute to them. That's fascinating.
I didn't even think of that. Yeah, it could be a tribute to them, like a piece of the Civil War will always be in Portland, Maine.
Will always be in Portland, Maine. The 4th Maine and the 5th Maine were both at the Battle of the Wilderness. The 5th Maine sent multiple companies from Portland, so very possible that it was someone from there.
Wow.
The 5th Maine actually still has, if you don't know about it, please go visit. The 5th Maine has a museum on Peaks Island. It's fantastic. It was a soldiers' retreat after the war. The Veterans Association bought this house as a place for soldiers to go on vacation. Spend time together, relax, and it became their veterans' home. It's wonderfully preserved, lots of cool stuff in there. Their original colors are in there, so a really, really cool stop for people here in Portland that are looking for something to do. Peaks Island for sure. 5th Maine Museum.
I did not realize that was a thing.
Yeah,
I got to go check that out now.
Yeah, the 5th Maine fought right next to the 3rd in the Battle of Bull Run, the first battle of the war. They were brigaded together under Oliver Otis Howard, who by then had been already promoted to general, or he was still a colonel, I guess, but he was running a brigade. And under their command, and the Mainers fought together there. Then the 5th would end up being switched out to a different corps and separated. But the 3rd and the 4th Maine fought side by side for the rest of the war together.
Wow, absolutely. So I understand that the 20th of Maine, going back to the 20th, I understand that they were a union dissolved, or a regiment dissolved, and then they said you have to keep fighting. So the 20th of Maine was formed. Is that how that kind of went?
So I think you might be thinking the 2nd Maine. So the 2nd Maine was dissolved, and then they had a little over 100 men that had signed those 3-year enlistment papers.
Yep.
So in 1862, the rest of the regiment's going home.
Yep.
They're done. The rest of these guys had signed 3-year papers. So they were then transferred. Their regiment was dissolved. The colors went home. The colonels went home. All the officers were done because they'd done their 2 years and left.
Yep.
So the rest of the soldiers were then basically folded into the 20th Maine,
Oof.
which happened all over the place, especially during all of the draft. Because if you think about the 3rd Maine, it was a 3-year regiment.
Yep.
It started in June of 61. They finished in June of 64. Well, all the guys that were drafted in 63 still had 3-year papers. So they got then folded into the 17th Maine, which is another regiment in the same corps.
Yep.
They were able to keep fighting there. But yeah, you weren't done until your time was up, which was really tough because if you had any sort of unit loyalty or I'm part of the 2nd Maine or I'm part of the 20th Maine and the unit's done, that's the case. I don't remember when the 20th Maine was dissolved. I'm not a historian of the 20th.
Sure.
But I'm sure that was the case. But you're probably thinking the 2nd Maine joining into the 20th, and it was a crazy story. Days before the Battle of Gettysburg. I mean, literally before one of the biggest battle of the war. These guys are being shifted into some new regiment. And,
man.
They were essentially mutineers. They could have been shot. It was very, very tumultuous. And Joshua Chamberlain, to his credit, navigated that situation superbly, and it's another part of his lore as well. He's just an incredible Maine figure. So if you don't know about Joshua Chamberlain, visit his museum in Brunswick. I'm just plugging everybody today. These are free plugs, by the way. I need to start charging for this. But no, the 20th Maine Museum is fantastic. It's in Brunswick, or Museum of Joshua Chamberlain, I should say. And great stories there as well. So if you're interested about the 20th, if you heard the Ballad of the 20th Maine, for sure, a great place to visit. But.
Yeah, I understand that Chamberlain was very, very well-spoken, and he was the one who kind of quelled the mutineers coming out of the 2nd, because the 2nd's like, we want to go home.
That's
You know,
exactly
everybody's going home, and we got to keep going.
That's exactly
Gettysburg?
right.
We don't want to do that.
That's exactly right.
So they wanted to mutiny, and they're like, okay, we got to send in like somebody who's going to be able to quell this, and they got Chamberlain to get them into the 20th, is how I understand it.
Yep, they got very lucky by assigning them. They were the only other. The 2nd Maine was in the 5th Army Corps, and the only other Maine regiment in the 5th Army Corps at the time was the 20th Maine. So that's why they assigned them together. They're like, well, stick in the same corps.
Yep.
And very lucky that they ran Joshua Chamberlain, not some other general or colonel that could have been handled things much differently. So,
Yeah, no, definitely. I think a lot of people could have gotten dishonorably discharged.
For sure.
Yep.
Yep.
I know we normally think about the battles such happening mostly around the Mason-Dixon line, but I understand that the northernmost skirmish in the Civil War was actually in Vermont.
Yeah, there was a raiding party essentially that was coming through Canada. The idea was they would come through Canada and then raid into Vermont. And there was a series of raids in the north that happened. Not only in the north, but in the western theater as well, that were very similar. And the idea was you'd go and create havoc and take stuff, take goods, cause problems, and create any sort of
Any sort of chaos?
Yeah, well,
or?
Chaos, but doubt. Any sort of doubt in the Union cause, and that was the idea. By 1863, when this raid happened, I think it was 63. The feeling was that if we just wait out the North, they're gonna quit this thing. They're just gonna be done.
That's really interesting too, because I think that the North expected the Civil War to be like a quick, like, okay, we're just gonna hit them with the military might of the federal government, and then we're just gonna we're gonna all go home. We're gonna be gone, and this is gonna be done in a couple weeks.
Frankly, both sides thought it was gonna end very quickly. The South thought they would fight a war and realized that they were serious and just let them go.
Yep.
Oliver Otis Howard wrote a very famous letter right before he became the colonel of the 3rd Maine to his mother, and saying that, we need to get Virginia, North Carolina, and Tennessee back in the Union, but we don't need the Gulf states. They can just leave. They're a drain on us anyway. So this was a guy who literally helped fight to preserve the Union. That's I'll let half of them go. There was certainly lots of feelings at the time about what should this country look like and what should it be.
Yeah.
So I think that was the case. The raid into Vermont it's a great story. There's some cool books and articles out there. You can Google it. Was a really cool anecdote of this war that had a billion cool anecdotes. When you have brother fighting brother and family fighting family and states fighting states, you get those stories, and they're all over the place. But an interesting raid for sure. Lots of interesting raid stories. There's I think it's might be Chambersburg or a town similar in Pennsylvania that still to this day will have an annual celebration of when their town was burned by the Confederacy.
Nice.
As like a celebration day, which is such a bizarre thing to me. But
yay, congrats! This is the day the rebels burned us down.
Yeah. But really, it's fascinating because it's again still part of their history. And the Civil War is one of those periods of time that again has a billion of those stories.
That's so interesting. So we talk about the role of men in the Civil War, but what role did women have in the Civil War? I feel like too often we focus on the generals and the soldiers, but I imagine there has to be some unsung heroes in terms of women in the Civil War.
Absolutely. So our reenacting group, the 3rd Maine Infantry, has a very active civilian group. They portray civilian reenactors, and they portray civilians during the period of time in different roles. The primary role of civilians obviously was on the home front. Soldiers were leaving home, often with multiple kids, and saying, see you later, see you in 3 years. Imagine walking out the door and saying, oh, I might not see you for 3 years.
Bye.
That's just how it was.
Yep.
Very tough. They were keeping the home front going, figuring out a way to ration and secure food on minimal pay that was coming at random times. The Army would pay whenever the Army decided to pay, which caused problems. So all of that for sure. But there were also organizations, aid organizations, the largest being the United States Sanitary Commission. So the United States Sanitary Commission was organized and funded through the federal government to help provide sanitary goods for the soldiers, soap, socks, clean shirts, things like that. So that was a piece. There were also local aid societies as well that were providing aid from the home front. Mm-hmm. More often than not, fresh food. That was the number one thing the soldiers wanted in the field.
Yeah, makes sense.
Something not hardtack or salted pork.
Oh, hardtack is
terrible.
Hardtack
terrible.
and teeth breakers.
It's terrible. It does work. It fills you up. I can attest to it. You could eat 2 pieces of hardtack and be full for the day, but it's
but it's so painful to eat.
It's not fun. Yeah, soak it in coffee. That's the tip.
Okay.
So that was another piece, but obviously nursing as well. Clara Barton, obviously very famous. From Maine, Sarah Sampson is a name that folks can look up and check out. Sarah Sampson was known as the matron of the 3rd Maine.
Oh, wow.
Her husband was a lieutenant colonel in the 3rd Maine, got very sick during the fighting on the peninsula in 1862 and went home. he was done. He was discharged. Well, she came back. She came back and stayed as a nurse through the rest of the war. She ended up serving in some of the largest Army hospitals, both during and after the war, and is currently buried at Arlington National Cemetery. So,
even though she never had any military experience.
Even though she never had any military experience. So she was that important to the war effort that they buried her with honors there. So that's something that's fascinating as well. Certainly they're out there. Amazing stories of perseverance. But I think, the most important story is who's taking care of the children at home, who's keeping things running at home when entire towns have essentially volunteered to go.
Yep.
The role of women in the American Civil War, absolutely, both sides was absolutely monumental, and most especially to the soldiers in the field in terms of support.
Yep.
Very tough. Being a Civil War
Largely
soldier,
support roles, largely keeping the kids and just keeping the next generation, because we're going to lose a lot of the generation in the Civil War, just keeping the next generation like healthy and able to continue on.
Absolutely. And keeping them alive.
Yeah.
And if you think about, a father of maybe 8 children that signs up and he gets $13 a month as his pay as a private in the Union Infantry, that's hard. That's a hard thing to do. And you might get that money 3-4 times a year in little lump sums, and that's it. There were pension organizations, and there were different banks that would essentially float loans based on soldiers' pay and things like that were invented during the war. But it was very hard being on the home front, being very hard.
That's so fascinating because we complain about being paid biweekly, right? We complain about being paid biweekly, and the union was just kind of like, yeah, we'll pay you when we can or when we think to do it.
The 3rd Maine famously went almost 8 months without getting paid. It was 7 months without getting paid. And they finally got their pay after the Peninsular Campaign, which was awful, and lots of guys died.
Where was the Peninsula Campaign?
So basically leading up to the approaches of Richmond, Virginia from the coast. So Williamsburg, Yorktown, that area, and coming up the coast there. It was a brutal campaign. Well, they famously got paid after that. They were camped, in the general vicinity of it was Alexandria, in the general vicinity of Washington, D.C., and they went out and they sent a bunch of money home, but then they went out and bought a bunch of stuff. So like these soldiers, like all of a sudden these pictures of these soldiers wearing big fancy hats or new coats and, holding pistols and new guns that they'd bought for themselves. Because, 20-year-old kids or 22-year-old kids that all of a sudden have, equivalent of 4 months or 5 months worth of back pay in your pocket. You got some money.
Okay, so now you're going to start buying stupid stuff.
Yeah, so which was a problem because if they had family at home, maybe a mother that was at home that was trying to take care of the homestead, she's like, "Can you please send some money back here, Billy, because you're supposed to be helping."
And they're just they're just out here like, I'm sorry, I can't hear you over the sound of my new Sharps carbine.
Check out my cool new hat. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly right.
Speaking of hats, and this question is largely going to go over the heads of most of the listeners, which is, in my opinion, totally okay because I got to know. I've seen a bit of the 3rd reenactment. I've seen a little bit of the promo materials. Did anybody in the unit historically wear Hardees?
So the 3rd, it's a great question. There are pictures of 3rd Maine soldiers wearing Hardee hats.
Yes! Okay. So there is a chance.
Almost all of them were purchased after the Peninsular Campaign in 1862. The 4th Maine wore them. The 4th Maine was issued them. That's what they were issued for hats. The 3rd Maine went down in a gray uniform. So they actually went to the war in a gray uniform. You have to understand the cadet uniform and the militia uniform before the American Civil War was gray. That was the reason why the Confederacy stuck with gray. They had so many of them in stockpiles. They just went with it. The Federal Union Army, the regular army, wore blue. Yep. So that was what had changed. There was an arsenal in Pennsylvania, the Schuylkill Arsenal, that had only a certain amount of uniforms when the war started. So they could only outfit a certain number of regiments, and all these new regiments were flowing into D.C. like crazy. Well, the 3rd Maine, and the newspapers bear this out, were handsomely dressed in their gray uniforms top to bottom. It was out of the Maine militia stores. So in Augusta, they outfitted them in gray uniforms, gray kepis, and everything else. They wore those gray uniforms through the Battle of Bull Run, and then they would get their blue uniforms after the Battle of Bull Run.
Oh, wow.
So really interesting little fact there. But I think what's interesting about the hats is that I cannot find any record anywhere the 3rd Maine was issued Hardee hats. They were issued those gray kepis out of the stores, and then they were issued what was called the Type 1 forage cap as their hat. Yeah, very similar. So a forage cap is a big round disc on the top. The point it's all in the French style. Everything was very French.
Yeah.
It was after the Crimean War, and the French army was awesome, right? Napoleon was the best general of all the time, and the French were really cool. So like everything was styled.
Wait, the French fought in Ukraine?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, whoa! I did not know about that.
Yeah. Google the Crimean War. Pretty wild.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the point was that the style was super sought after in the idea. But what soldiers ended up quickly finding out is it actually became a pretty handy tool, and it became a forage cap because you could actually flip it upside down, turn it into a bucket, and the flat bottom would essentially serve as the bottom of the bucket, and you could store berries or any sort of food item, apples, anything you could forage along your way. So that's where forage caps come from.
And I've also heard that it keeps the heat in pretty good.
All of them keep the heat in. I mean, it's still a wool hat. So it definitely keeps the heat in. The other style of cap that officers wore, certainly, but the 3rd Maine were also issued. These originally were called kepis. And the kepi was still a round disc at the top, but a much smaller bucket. A much smaller bucket, more forward-leaning, and that was more in the French style, the chasseur cap, so a very, very similar style cap there. Part of being a reenactor is learning all the different styles and doing different portrayals. We also have to keep kind of kits available for different groups that we portray.
Different campaigns,
different campaigns. Our reenactment group portrays the 3rd Maine in the middle of the war. So by Gettysburg, we portray a mid-war 3rd Maine Regiment. So we're all wearing blue uniforms. We're all wearing light blue trousers. We're all wearing bummer caps or forage caps, except for the officers. The musket was the 1861 Springfield musket.
What are the officers wearing in terms of headwear? Like a Stetson?
Great question. So it was all private purchase. So officers were to purchase their uniform with their own money.
Yeah.
They were paid more. They were given an allowance to do so, but it was all tailored and purchased individually.
Okay.
What was interesting is that the 3rd Maine, most of its officers by Gettysburg had been enlisted men before. They were sergeants and corporals before that had been promoted up through the ranks.
Yep.
So a lot of them were still wearing whatever they had. They were wearing a sack coat with officers' bars sewn on them, or just a black hat that they wore, a civilian style hat. But yeah, a black style hat is what I wear. That was what most pictures bear out that the soldiers are wearing. It's like a Stetson style,
Okay.
Kind of like that. Less cowboy-y, but same idea.
Yep.
Certainly it was what was popular at the time. And uniforms changed for sure throughout the course of the war. They became less ornate, obviously more functional, and less showy. The more showy they are, the bigger target you are, especially later in the war when you're sitting in a trench directly across from an enemy. Made it very, very difficult.
So, okay. So is there a chance that wearing a Hardee in the 3rd Maine is something you can do?
So at times, so if you're doing a 3rd Maine event, you're portraying the 3rd Maine, we prefer you don't. However, if you're in a parade or if you're doing an event, and trust me, we just did one where we asked everybody to wear Hardee hats. You should have one in your kit. So if you're thinking about joining the 3rd Maine, you can absolutely have a Hardee. I absolutely have one. I've worn it in parades and at events before for sure. So
I just always love the one side up. It
looks so cool.
Yeah, it's so cool looking, like Theodore Roosevelt.
Ostrich plume sticking out of the side.
Oh, it's great.
It's awesome. Yeah,
I love Hardee hats.
That's cool.
Why I dedicated a specific moment to ask you about the Hardee hat, because I'm like, if I could buy one, there's a reason, right? Like there's a reason.
Don't tell. I mean, I'm on a podcast. I guess everybody's gonna know now, but don't tell our wives. But a lot of why we do this because we just get to buy a bunch of cool new stuff. And it's like, I need this hat for this particular impression that I'm doing this weekend. Yep. So yeah. Cool.
You don't understand.
Yeah. But there were certainly 3rd Maine soldiers that wore Hardee hats for sure. Were they issued them or do they wear them in any sort of large number? I can't find any proof of that.
I understand that the Hardee hat was more akin to the Iron Brigade.
Yeah, the Iron Brigade they were worn in the West a lot. It was the regular Army hat. That was the standard Army uniform.
Yep.
So the United States regulars had 20 regiments of infantry, I think, when the war broke out.
Yep.
They all wore Hardee hats. They wore dark blue trousers and dark blue frock coats. They were very well dressed. Very well. That was what the Army was supposed to look like. Yep. That's why the 4th Maine, when they were mustered, that's where they bought those hats and they issued those hats out. The 3rd was just issued whatever they had.
Yeah, whatever they had.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. Just get down there. Quickly get down to DC as quick as possible.
Yep, just get what you can wear. We don't really care. Just get down there as quick as possible.
Get down there as quick as possible, and then we'll issue what you need when we get down there.
Yep.
Exactly
Well, did that ever end up leading to complications where you couldn't tell the difference between Union and Confederate?
For sure,
they were both wearing gray?
Especially at Bull Run. It's very famous. The Battle of Bull Run had Union and Confederate wearing gray. The regiment, the 3rd Maine, was fighting. It was right at the very end of the battle. They crested a hill and started moving towards a wood line where the enemy was concealed. The enemy held their fire because they weren't sure they were wearing gray until they could see the flags crest the hill as well, and they saw the American flag, and that's when they would then commence fire.
Got it.
Yeah, it's okay. Yep. They are the bad guys. Let's shoot at them.
Yep.
So that was it certainly happened for sure. By later in the war, no. I mean, things kind of settled out. The Confederacy uniform history is vast. I mean, you could write volumes of books on it. Really interesting. The different styles and types and colors and fabrics. The Union Army was, for the most part, fairly boring. It was wearing, sky blue trousers and a light blue sack coat. I mean, a dark blue sack coat. Pretty standard.
Right, because it was federal.
It was the federal government. It was the federal government in the United States of America, and contracts varied. Quality varied for sure, which was a big problem. Shoes, brogans were a big problem. They contracted them. They made them as cheap as possible to get them out. Fill the contract. If you fill the contract with 75,000 pairs of brogans, who cares if they're any good or not? You fill the contract.
They were mil spec, right? So they were cheap and they were just get about as quick as possible.
These are leather-soled shoes, which are wild, walking on grass, very slippery. They have some of them have heel plates on them, but they're not super comfortable. They break in eventually, kind of get used to them.
Yep.
I don't know how many miles. I should probably do the math about how many miles I think I've put on my brogans, but I think I've had them for 14 years, so I don't know.
How many times have you had them resold?
This particular pair I've never had resold.
Whoa!
My first pair I had resold twice.
Okay,
but I spent a little bit more money, got a better pair.
Nice.
Yeah, there's a lot of miles on them, and it's amazing putting on all this equipment and this gear. Going, how do these guys do this for 20 miles a day? You know what I mean?
It's so heavy.
It's crazy. It's bulky and clunky and sometimes not well made. It's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So after the podcast, I'll definitely have to pick your brain more about where to get a Hardy hat.
After the podcast, we're getting you to come to an event. We're going to get you in uniform. So you've already outed yourself here. All
right, cool.
If you like acting, if you like talking to people.
I love talking to people.
If you like history, reenacting is the absolute best way to get into that.
Great. Sounds good to me. So I do want to talk about reenacting,
sure.
But I want to ask one more question. Did Maine's involvement in the Civil War lead to any long-term changes within the state of Maine, or was Maine largely insulated from the effects of the Civil War due to its geographic isolation?
Great question. Definitely was not insulated because of geographic isolation because of the amount of people that went and died in the war.
Sure.
The state was substantially changed with the just number of population, dealing with veterans issues, dealing with pension issues. These are major logistical and financial commitments that the state had to make. And the state was still very new, so they were still working their way through that. In terms of like houses being burned down, no, like of course, like that wasn't an impact there, but the impact was obviously indirect and heavy. I think that some of the biggest changes, the Veterans Home in Togus, which is in Augusta, is a really interesting testament. It's a great history to read about that. Many of the 3rd Maine soldiers and from all the Maine regiments would go and end up live there for the rest of the war. You had a huge number of people that came home missing limbs. At the time, wheelchairs weren't really a thing. I mean, they had them, but they weren't not like they are today.
Sure.
So if you basically lost a leg, you were like useless now, essentially in the 1860s. So like, how did they deal with that? Aid societies again had to maintain and stay from there. So the long lasting effects were there for sure. I think that in reading a lot of the post war stuff, it instilled a sense of patriotism in the state of Maine that hadn't really existed before. They had obviously great pride in the fact that they were a new state. They had great pride and everything else. But unlike the War of 1812, which is when Falmouth burned down here, Portland burned down, and all those,
Boxer versus the Enterprise,
not quite the same, right?
Sure.
It was still very separate. Maine was still very community focused, not state focused, not nationally focused. So there was a lot of national pride there too.
Yep.
But yeah, I think the biggest impact obviously was dealing with these tens of thousands.
Who came back from the war?
Who came home broken.
Who were not the same that they left.
That's exactly right.
And I guess there's something to be said about like mutual aid and all these mutual aid groups that definitely just existed all around Portland,
for sure,
and Maine in general,
for sure.
Who just kind of came together and compiled resources and created a community around these soldiers who fought for preserving the Union and came back absolutely broken.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Oh man, that is a heavy way to talk about the history of Maine.
Took a tough turn there, and it's I think that it's so interesting talking Civil War with anybody, because it's so hard to kind of bounce from the interesting stories of how hot is it in that uniform, to what was it like if you lost both of your legs, Cannonball took them off, like what happened to you after that? Well, Joshua Chamberlain, this is a gross but very interesting fact, lived for the rest of his life with a catheter. After the Battle of Petersburg, he was shot through the hip. So
no!
A catheter in the 1860s was literally a metal tube made of brass. So I mean, an unbelievable pain. He must have been in all day, every day for the rest of his life. And you think about him becoming governor for 2 terms and being president of Bowdoin College, and you see him on this horse. He looks all stately, and he's giving these speeches.
And he's got a catheter.
He's got a catheter in the whole time. Yeah, it's wild. So I mean, unbelievable what these guys went through, and the scars, whether it be physical or emotional, they carried after the war with them.
No doubt. It's also there's a really interesting statistic that the Incan people, right? The Incan people in Mesoamerica were better at brain surgery than the Civil War doctors.
Not overly surprising. The 3rd Maine, our reenactment group, has an unbelievably knowledgeable surgeon. He knows he's great because he'll tell you he knows nothing about modern medicine. He's not a doctor currently, but he knows as much as any doctor would have during the American Civil War. He's just that knowledgeable as a historian. Amazing facts, details, how they do surgeries, things like that. So at any of our events, you can come see him and see some of the real tools they use. But brain surgery, incredible. All the surgeries were incredibly unknown. The idea they knew that dirty things made you sick.
Yeah.
But they did not understand the idea of a germ. Like that, the germ that it was an actual like organism was just didn't exist in their mind. Mm-hmm. So they knew enough to be clean, but clean could mean wiping the bloody blade on your apron and then doing the next surgery because, well, it's clean. I can't see blood, must be clean.
Yikes.
Sterilization didn't exist. Number one killer in the American Civil War was diarrhea. It was dysentery and
dysentery.
Diarrhea. Yeah, awful. So
shout out to Oregon Trail.
The colonel of the 3rd Maine wrote a letter in 1863 to the adjutant general of the state saying that he lost a man to chronic diarrhea. He was a Native American from the Bethel area who had been drafted. He was 40 years old, and I'm just picturing this 40-year-old guy, Native American, just sitting there, just absolutely miserable. Just gets down, Virginia. He's in the winter. He's in some, log cabin with a canvas roof, fashioned tent, just trying to survive and literally just dying of diarrhea.
Yes. Yeah, the dehydration
unbelievable.
Of it. Yeah, that's very interesting too, because you see that all throughout historical exploration as well. You see in Africa, I spent a little bit of time in South Africa, and there are these trees, these yellow trees called fever trees. Okay. And they called them the fever trees because whenever the explorers were around them, and once again, they don't understand the concept of a germ, right? They would get fevers, right? So they called them the fever trees, and they assumed it was because of the trees, when in reality it was because they were getting bitten by mosquitoes that had God knows what disease. Yep.
That's interesting.
And that was the kind of the history of the fever tree.
For as advanced as the American Civil War was in general terms, same stuff, same story. That this makes me sick. Maybe I shouldn't do that.
Maybe I shouldn't do it. Yeah, and we just had no idea.
For the longest time, it's funny. It's in the manuals actually. A lot of the manuals that are written, they talk about where to put your bathroom facilities, and more often than not, they say to make sure you put them upstream from camp to make sure. Yeah, it's like no, don't do that. Put it downstream.
As a registered Maine guide, I do not advocate for putting your toiletries upstream. Exactly. That is not the play. Well, that goes against.
As a Maine guide, do you recommend people as they're walking along finding a random body of water, sticking your canteen and drinking from it?
Oh goodness, no.
So that's these guys. If they take any water they can get.
Yeah. I've done that. I've done that up in the Gulf Vegas area. I was like, oh yeah, it's flowing water, should be fine, right? And I started drinking, and this guy comes in, he's like, are you sure you want to do that? And I'm like, yeah, should be good. I don't know, it's flowing, right? Yeah. Well, that was before I became a Maine guide.
An entire platoon of the 15th Alabama got captured trying to find water on Little Round Top. They didn't get to make the charge because they were out literally looking for water in some stream somewhere, and they ran into a Union force and got captured.
Oops.
Bad. But I'm sure the water in that canteens were just awful.
Nice, stagnant. Oh yeah, that
again. I literally don't know how anybody survived.
Beautiful mid-Atlantic water. Oh god. Awful. Yep. My buddy's through hiking the Appalachian Trail right now, and just one of his biggest complaints going through the Central Atlantic was the water. He's like, this is all gross. It's all stagnant. It's all green. I hate this so much. So, all right. So let's kind of shift gears here a little bit and talk about Civil War reenactment as a hobby, right? Sure. I feel like everybody at some point has heard of reenactment, but very few people actually take it serious to the point where they do it. Have you watched the movie A Walk in the Woods?
No, I haven't.
It's based on the novel by Bill Bryson, where it's Robert Redford and Nick Nolte, who are hilarious together, and they attempt to through hike the Appalachian Trail. Okay. And there's one scene where they're down. They must be in either Virginia or down in the Central Atlantic sometime, which makes me wonder, because I don't think Bryson actually made it that far, but I would have to go back and read the book again. And they're in a diner, and you got these Civil War reenactors. One of them's Union, one of them's Confederate. Yeah. They're sitting next to each other eating eggs and bacon and all this stuff. And then it pans over to Bryson and Katz, Nick Nolte's character, just arguing about the Appalachian Trail. But you just see these Civil War reenactors casually chilling in that diner. It's I feel like everybody's heard of Civil War reenactment and been yeah, that seems like something that other people do, but nobody's actually taken it seriously.
It's funny
enough to do it.
It's funny when you said movie, I thought you were going to mention Legally Blonde, which is a terrible movie. It might embarrass that I know about.
Is there Civil War reenactment in Legally Blonde?
So her father, I think the main character's father is a Civil War reenactor, and she goes out after this battle, and she's looking for Dad. She needs it for something. She's like, Dad, 15 guys stand up. They're like, what? And they're like, oh, this one. They were like, okay. And all the rest of the guys pretend to be dead again.
Die.
So it's just it's a big joke. And look, you have to be a little bit nerdy to be a Civil War reenactor. You have to be, obviously, whether you're a history nerd or you're a uniform nerd or you're a gun nerd, you're into black powder firing, like whatever it is, we all have a little bit of nerd in us.
Sure.
So we're low hanging fruit for funny jokes. Conan O'Brien is a great skit where he went and visited Civil War reenactors, and a plane flies over and he looks up and goes, "What demonry in the sky?" It's just funny stuff because you have to have fun with it.
You have to suspend your disbelief a little bit.
You have to suspend your disbelief. I think one of the things that I found in, again, 27 something years of reenacting is that all sorts of people are reenactors. You get some people that are, best people on earth, very normal, down to earth, regular jobs, and you get some people that are truly unique,
little odd jobs,
truly odd,
oddballs.
for sure,
Yep.
just like any other hobby, I guess.
Yep.
It definitely requires someone who, again, enjoys being able to connect with people, whether it be within your own unit or the general public, about something.
Absolutely.
You're essentially on stage at all times.
Yep.
Whether you like acting or whether you just like the history, it doesn't matter as much. That's a piece of the role.
Yep.
But yeah, for sure. We get weird looks. If we go into, my wife hates it. If I wear my uniform and we stop for dinner somewhere, you have to get out of your uniform and wear like normal clothes for this.
But do I?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we're all together though, we definitely wear our uniforms, and it's interesting because the looks that you get, people don't really know what to do with you. You know what I mean? It's like, well, what is this thing? And some people think it's super cool, or they've seen Gettysburg and they want to talk about it.
Yep.
Others look at you like you're just a freak, and that's okay. We're nerds and we're used to that. But
Yep.
I think by and large, especially in all the years I've done this, it's very, very rare that I get someone that just comes to poke fun.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's more often than not that they're just super curious and they've always known something about the war, but they've always wanted to know more.
Absolutely.
Whether it be the 20th Maine or Grant or whatever.
Whatever
topic.
So what are some of the rules of a reenactment, right? Because I've watched a bunch of them online preparing for this podcast, and it seems like there's a lot going on, right? Whenever I watched them, I watched the one in particular. I think it took place in Gettysburg, and like there's a fence, and I think the fence was kind of like a main part of it. But you have the Union, and they're all just kind of hanging out, and like some of the guys are over here marching, some of the guys are over here just watching. The Confederates are like going parallel to each other. I'm like, what's going on here? Wouldn't you like? I guess I'm so like used to the notion of like the First World War, right? Where it was like, this is my side, this is your side, you go in the middle, you get shot, right? But in the Civil War, it just seems like it was much more convoluted than that. And guys are just kind of marching in, they got flags, and then they like break this fence down. And that was apparently like a huge part of it. The Union's firing on them, the Confederates are breaking down the fence. They're doing
Probably saw a clip from Pickett's Charge.
Pickett's Charge, which by the way was a pretty big failure for the Confederates.
A big one, yeah, that was a big mistake.
Yep.
Let me try to compartmentalize this. There's rank. So let's start with that. There's rank, and I was like, my rank in my company is a captain.
Yep.
I'm elected. I'm a captain. My responsibility is my company of men, and I'll have a certain number of NCOs, a couple sergeants, and 3 or 4 corporals, and then that's our group, and then we have privates, and we portray that role in the field.
Yep.
So if I am there, then I'm part of a regiment, and I have a colonel and maybe a major or a lieutenant colonel that's over in charge of me.
Wow.
That gives me orders. He has a general or a colonel that's over him that's giving him orders as well. So it's a military structure in the field. Now it's not for real. We're not killing each other, but we are doing exactly what the manual tells us to do by the manual with the period terms, with the period orders, in the period way, in the correct historical way, to execute those commands.
Wow.
The rules will depend on the scenario. We're doing one this next weekend, actually tomorrow. We're headed to the woods of New Hampshire to do what's what we call a tactical, which is a non-scripted battle.
Oh,
Two sides start in the woods. We kind of work towards each other and then battle as they would a battle. Try to outflank or outmaneuver one another. Yep. There's less rules, quote unquote, there. But a battle reenactment, like a big one, like at Gettysburg or Antietam, will certainly have a general script that it follows. It's portraying a certain thing.
Oh.
So more often than not, we portray a particular regiment or a particular brigade that had an action during the battle, and we're portraying whatever those groups did.
Wow.
So we'll generally know what happens. We generally know who wins. We generally know where the outcome is going to be. At Gettysburg that we did 3 weeks ago, the battle was extremely scripted. It was like 12 or 15 little maps that we had to look through and study to say, okay, well, at this point you're going to do this, and at this point you're going to do this, and don't go too far here. But then there's other rules for safety, because we're not trying to kill each other. Cannons are very dangerous. So when they're roaring, you can't stand right in front of them.
No kidding.
Civil War muskets, even though there's not bullets in them, will fire little particles of hot black powder that can burn your skin. Be very dangerous. So you have to be very careful with that too. And cavalry. Cavalry is a big danger piece, because these are horses riding around in the field while you're blowing off, hundreds and hundreds of pounds of black powder all at once. These horses can do anything. They're very unpredictable. So you have to know where they're going to be and how they're going to be reacting.
Wow.
So a big piece of safety as well. So I think hopefully that kind of answers your question in terms of what some of the rules are.
Definitely.
The one question that I don't know if you're going to ask, but I'll just answer it because I'm sure you will, is how do you know when to die? That's
that was actually the next one on the,
and everybody wants to
who
know.
dies? Like, how do you determine that?
It's a great question. And unfortunately, I have a crappy answer for you. It kind of depends. I know. Sorry. But let me give you some examples. We'll do some events where we, at Gettysburg, we were portraying Company K of the 3rd Maine. Company K of the 3rd Maine lost their entire color guard. All 6 of them were either killed or wounded. Their captain was shot with 4 different bullets in one volley.
Ouch.
And 60% of the company was killed or wounded. So before the battle, we basically gave everybody a fate card. We said, here's going to be your fate. So you knew whether you knew your name, you knew where you were from and your age, and you knew whether or not you were going to survive the battle.
So they were portraying soldiers that were historically there.
Actually there.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So sometimes we do that. Other times it's, okay, we're in the middle of this scenario. We need to give ground. This is a good time for us to take some casualties.
Yep.
And the term is hits. To take some hits. So, we'll let people know. How I always did it, I did two different ways. One, if I was out of ammunition or my gun didn't work for some reason or I was out of water and I was done. Or if a guy looked me in the eye and shot. That's always my rule. If I made eye contact with someone across the battlefield and he shot his musket, I figured, okay, he got me. So that was my rule with him.
The owner of the former owner, this is mine now, but the former owner of this forage cap usually liked to die first just so he could watch the battle unfold.
For anybody new to reenacting, I absolutely recommend dying on a hill so you have good field of vision early on, for sure.
This is my hill to die on.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And just make sure you keep the sun out of your face. But yeah, it's it really depends. A lot of it's scenario driven. And again, there'll be some scenarios where we list. There have been events where they've used a black Sharpie to color one of your musket cartridges. So when you pull out a cartridge, if you got a black one, okay, you're dead.
Oh wow.
So we've done things like that.
Sneaky
too.
ways to
kind of let people know when to go.
Yep.
But for a big battle reenactment, it's more based on the scenario. If we know we're getting flanked at this time, we know more of our guys need to take hits here. If we're charging, we're not taking as many hits because they're not shooting. We're charging at them. We need to stay.
What does melee look like in these? Because I understand that melee was a huge part, and you got bayonets going.
Great question. Yeah. So at battle reenactments, we don't fix our bayonets. So we don't use the bayonets during the reenactments in the field against
even with like situations like Chamberlain's charge or Pickett's charge.
Right. Exactly. Again, depending on the scenario, but almost always never for safety reasons.
Sure.
Someone slips and falls, it literally can kill you in an instant. It's a very sharp and very long instrument. There are, films, maybe a living history event or something where you do that. You may have your bayonet fixed for something, but generally speaking, at battle reenactments, no. We also don't use ramrods often, which is another question because we'll just essentially pour the powder down the barrel with nothing else and not ram any paper down, which is what they did. They used to ram paper in a mini ball down the barrel and they would fire it. We don't do that either because if you leave a ramrod in, the idea is that maybe the ramrod gets shot and is used as a projectile.
Oh, no way.
So there's some certain safety things you just can't do. And again, a lot of it's because it's, it used to be 20,000 reenactors at a time in a field. Anything can happen.
Yeah, I've definitely heard stories of. There are of course stories of things happening, accidents happening, people getting shot.
Yeah,
these things do happen.
The bigger thing I've seen is heart attacks and people getting run over by stuff. I saw a guy get run over by a cannon wheel, the wheel of a caisson, and it crushes. Literally shattered his leg. I've never seen anything like it. So
Yikes.
Stuff happens.
Stuff does happen.
But we've been very blessed. Our unit, I think we've had 0 major safety violations in 27 years. So we're very careful with that.
Yep.
Frankly, as a captain, that's my primary responsibility during a battle. It's maneuvering and doing the tactics, but also making sure the guys are safe, looking out for any potential dangers, making sure my guys aren't in front of a cannon line, things like that.
Yeah.
Wow. That's it's all piece of it.
There's a lot of moving parts in it.
Ton of moving parts. Experience is key. Experience is key, and that's why the officers that we elect are experienced. They know what they're doing. They've done this for a long time. Experience matters for sure. And we have new people that do their first ever reenactment. They're out there in the field of Gettysburg, and their eyes are as big as hen's eggs, and they have no idea what they're doing. And they have good officers, good NCOs, just like in the real Army. They'll get along. They'll be okay. And that's another taste of kind of what they went through that we go through as well.
And I feel like this kind of goes to show that like the people who engage in Civil War reenactments, like there deserves to be a level of respect here. You can be like, oh, they're just history nerds who go out there in uniforms, but it's like, nah, there's like some real stuff going on in these battles and like real safety hazards and real risk.
For sure. Yes. Yeah. Again, there are trolls everywhere, man. Right? Like if someone wants to make fun of us, they'll make fun of us. And we have a pretty strong online presence, and
Yes.
and it's fascinating because we'll post a reel and we'll get 80,000 views, and we'll get maybe a couple thousand likes, and then there's always some jerk that's like, how come you're doing this? You guys look stupid. It's like, okay, yeah, but the other 80,000 people that watch this video are like, that's kind of cool. You know what I mean?
That's kinda neat.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we just, you kind of go with the,
Yeah.
go with your odds. But yeah, you have to be a little weird. You know what I mean? To march, we just did an event at Peaks Island, actually, at the 5th Maine Museum this summer. And we parked our cars in one of the Portland parking lots, and we went down to the ferry. Well, it's March. So we formed up in March. We had our fife and drum going and playing. It ended up being almost like a mini parade. People came out and lined the streets, and they were clapping and waving, taking pictures. And, more often than not, it's like, well, this is really cool. This is a cool chance to experience a little something, even though we're a little weird, walking through town with uniforms on.
Yeah, but sure, but those are recognizable uniforms, right? It's not like it's not like this spontaneous militia just formed in Portland. Okay, these are Civil War reenactors.
Yeah. Confederate reenactors have to deal with different things that we do.
Oh,
and that's a topic. I don't want to get into it tons. I've never done any substantial Confederate reenacting. It's never been a draw for me. I had ancestors that fought in the Civil War for the Union. I figure that's who I'm here to portray. That's why I do it.
Yep.
However, I don't bemoan others that do it. I think that it's a big piece of their history too, and you have to be careful with that. In Maine, especially in the Northeast, it's challenging for sure. And I've seen some pretty crazy stuff for people that go after these reenactors that are really there for a different cause. You never know. But it's
really
it's touchy, and I think that one thing I've noticed again, some things have changed so much. Talk about how much changed in 20 years. It's crazy. People, spray painting and tearing down statues and stuff is just to me wild. I can't fathom that happening 20 years ago. It wouldn't even been thought of. Now it's just happens all the time. It happens on a weekend. You know what I mean? So it's really bizarre. I think that's an interesting piece as well about what we do, and to clarify that what we're doing is a historical interpretation,
of course,
not a modern commentary on anything. Right?
No, not at all.
And I think that's an important distinction as well. And
it's a replica, not.
And I can't speak. Certainly, there are bad people everywhere, so whatever. But I can't. For the majority of Confederate reenactors that I've met and known through the years, a lot of them are former veterans, people who have served our country. These are people that are there for historical purposes, not for anything else.
Somebody has to do it. Somebody has to do it. Otherwise, the events just don't have the realism. This is a part of the American story.
And it's a big part of this. It's a big part of our nation's history. That's a big part of how these towns and these areas were formed, and states came together in ways they had never come together before in the South in terms of organization and political organizations. There's a lot of history to the Civil War beyond the bad stuff.
Of course,
but. That's another. It's an interesting thing. Again, my recommendation to anybody that's listening, that comes to a reenactment, talk, ask questions, and talk and listen.
Yep.
Try not to prejudge as best you can. Again, you never know. You never know. I can't promise who you're going to meet, but for the most part, they're great people, and they have a great story to tell.
Yeah. The tearing down of the statues is very interesting because I recently got a different perspective on it because I was talking about that. It's like, oh man, you're tearing down statues of these respected generals. But the intentionality behind those statues is important as well, because I understand a lot of those statues were put up when they were trying to
in the 1890s, or in 1924 and 1936 when they were
trying to intimidate and enforce Jim Crow laws.
Put in 80 years after a war for a political purpose, and some that were built in the 50s is crazy. Right.
It's kind of one of those things where it's the intentionality was to intimidate versus to celebrate.
What I mean is statues in Lewiston, Maine, that are to Union soldiers that are being defaced.
That's a little
there's just no sense to it.
Yep.
And I think that again that's where we as reenactors have a mission, right? That's we have to educate and tell people about this.
Yep.
That this is you have to understand that we will never know what it was like in the 1860s. We'll never know. But the political, we hear all the time, political landscape's never been worse. Well, bullshit. I mean, they literally killed each other by the scores, by the tens of thousands in fields. We've been more divided, and I think that our hope is that there's a lesson from that.
Yep.
And our organization is very careful. So as getting back to reenactor land, we actually have a rule written in that we talk no modern politics at our events. It's just a thing. We just
you also wouldn't
know.
know.
We wouldn't know. So what we do is we say, if anybody starts going off on Trump or on Biden or anything else, I just go, oh, what about McClellan versus Lincoln? Who's
really just bring it right back.
Yeah. And
ever heard of Baxter State Park? Percival Baxter.
Percival Baxter's a great guy.
Yep.
So we really focus on that. I think that's been one of the keys to our success as a unit. Again, we've been around since the 80s. Our company, our Civil War reenacting organization, has some rules like that, and rules about how much you drink and how much you swear and things like that. Just do the right thing, be on your best behavior. And if you can't be civil with one another, this isn't the place for you.
Sure.
In other groups, who knows, but that's how we run.
That's how you do it in the third.
Yep.
Yeah. I feel like there's a stereotype amongst Civil War reenactors that all the Civil War reenactors are, and I feel like this is an important stereotype to break, especially to get Gen Z into Civil War reenacting. There's a stereotype that all the Civil War reenactors are like curmudgeon-y old men, right? Is that the case, or is there a generation of younger reenactors as well?
It's a great question. It has changed. I'll talk about changed a lot in the last 20 years. A lot of the reenactors when I joined a lot of them were former Vietnam veterans.
Oh, whoa.
So they were Vietnam veterans that were, in their 40s and they were, they wanted to live history. So that's just what they did. A lot of those guys are now in their 70s and they can't do it anymore. Some are sticking around the hobby. There definitely has been a change. I'm 41 now, I think almost 42. I am starting to have gray hair. I'm a big guy. Like I'm starting to phase out. Like my runway as a reenactor is running out. And the reason why is not because I don't love history or whatever, but it's because I'm not accurate. You know what I mean? I'm not portraying that. And I think that we're seeing a strong shift towards more authenticity. We're seeing a lot of Gen Zers getting involved that are interested in this, because they're looking at history in a different way from their screen. And I think that's the biggest difference. People have only seen history through video and online and everything else. They're on their phones. And this is a chance for them to put their phone away and experience something.
Yeah.
We have just a tremendous amount of young people. I think the average age in our unit of new members that join in is in the 27, 28-year-old range, which is wonderful.
Hey, that's right about where I'm at.
Right about where you're at. And actually, you're like our target audience. So someone who has, has some disposable income. This isn't cheap. This is an expensive hobby.
Yes, it is.
So you have to have a few bucks, or at least be able to get to a few bucks. You have to have some sort of ability to drive yourself places and have a job that allows you a little bit of flexibility to be playing war all weekend. Like that's a piece.
Yep.
That age group works really well. So we're noticing that we are shifting a little bit younger. We're also doing things that are a little bit more outside the box. It's very easy just to kind of camp with the Civil War theme, we call it, which is setting up a big camp, all this canvas, and you just sit there all day long, and sit under the tent fly and shoot the shit and then have your event. We're doing more immersive stuff. We're getting in the field. We're going on 2-3 mile marches at every event. We're doing the period drill 3-4 times a day.
And I feel like the tactical battles you're talking about are really interesting too, because it kind of injects new life and adds a little bit of a competitive aspect into Civil War reenacting 100%. Versus just redoing what's already been done.
100%.
It gives you. It's kind of like, I don't want to call it like Civil War airsoft because that's such a disrespect to reenactors. No, but it's like the tactical
similar idea. What we're doing is we're yes, but we're implementing the tactics that we practiced and drilled.
Yeah.
Skirmish drill is a big piece of military tactics. We drill it all the time. This is a chance for us to implement how that would have worked in the field.
Yep.
How you deploy, how you reform, how to move your flanks, how to fight in a Napoleonic style. Like how do you overwhelm an enemy with fewer numbers? You have to beat them tactically. So that's really what that's all about. Kind of cool. It is, again, it's different. It's definitely a different thing, and not for everybody. But I think that's the other piece that's been the key to our success as a reenacting organization is we do all sorts of different types of events.
Absolutely. I'd imagine, so yeah, and you brought up a really good point. I'd imagine getting the gear, especially muskets, and the financial cost is what gets in the way of a lot of Gen Zers getting into this hobby. Because, at that point in life, they have less disposable income. And to truly get into Civil War reenacting, you need a lot of really expensive gear from sutlers that, I don't know, are there any local sutlers?
So none that are like local.
Yikes.
There's a guy that spends his summers in Maine that has a sutlery shop. So yeah, it's kind of, but no, they're all over the place. Luckily, the internet, you can order anything online anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
The quality varies greatly. I have 2 hats here with me today. They're made by two very, very well-known makers. One's name is Billy. It's a shop called Dirty Billy's shop. It's in downtown Gettysburg. He's been hand making hats for 50 years.
Does he make Hardees?
He does make Hardees. Great ones, by the way. Yeah, so you go see his shop and go check it out. But that's a Dirty Billy's. And this is made by a company called Greg Starbuck. He's an individual maker. If you've ever seen the film Hostiles, that he makes all the hats in the movie Hostiles. It's a Christian Bale movie.
Oh, I'll have to watch it.
It's a good one. So all sorts of films, you'll see his hats. So these are hats that are made by individual makers. You can also buy them. They're made in Pakistan, and they sell them here in the United States too. So you can buy them anywhere. The hat you're wearing was probably a Pakistani reproduction.
So this is actually, do you think so? Because I believe this is a CNS.
Yeah, well, if it's CNS, then it's a good one. If CNS is a good one.
This this belonged to
or CNS or SNS.
CNS.
So we're gonna nerd out on your.
Yeah. No, this actually belonged to Francis Kern. Frank. Frank Curran. He was a former member of the 3rd, and he gave this to me.
Yep.
We worked together.
Not saying it's not a nice hat, but what I'm saying is that like the quality of reproductions has changed big time.
Oh yeah,
especially
definitely.
over the past
This
20
is not a
years.
reproduction. This is a really old hat, and you can see it's been used quite a bit.
For sure. That has certainly seen some use, and I think that's the thing that's really changed as well in the hobby.
Yep.
There are sutlers you can buy an entire kit for a couple $100, and that's fine to get started. Like you can get started with that. You can be reenacting for sure. We have guys that are buying $700 sack coats. So it really depends on how into it you want to get.
Yep.
But I think that's when you talk about cost of reenacting, the biggest thing that we say is join. We'll lend you what you need to get you started, and then buy your stuff incrementally.
Oh, so you have
absolutely
the 3rd Maine has like loaner gear?
Sure, 3rd Maine has loaner gear, but also individuals have loaner gear. Like I have loaner gear, so
okay.
like we all have stuff that we can loan out. And again, it's not something I would bank on forever. Can get you started. Again, you can go buy trousers, a pair of brogans, and a shirt. Basically everything you need for under your coat for a couple $100. So start there. Don't go out and buy a $1,500 musket day one. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's
probably
going
not.
to be a different thing.
Yep.
And I think that's certainly is prohibitive for folks who don't know where to start. A big piece of when you join the 3rd Maine is you're connected immediately with an NCO or an experienced member that will walk you through everything that you need.
Oh wow, okay.
Avoid this, try this.
Yep.
Here's where you want to shop. Here's where you want to avoid.
Oh, that's
so
actually really good.
All those things are a big piece of what we do. And again, we loan out gear. I think we're doing the event this weekend. I think we're bringing 3 or 4 muskets to loan out, at least 2 tents. So we're loaning out all sorts of stuff and getting people what they need to get going.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that it's good faith effort that you're going to buy your own stuff eventually.
Sure. So I guess that kind of naturally segues into the 3rd Maine, and your involvement in the 3rd Maine, where you've been doing this 27 years. You said?
Yeah, I think that's the math. Was it 26? And I started in 99. So I think that's right.
Yeah. The captain of the largest Civil War reenactment group in Maine.
Yep. Joined as a 14-year-old private. I was a big fan of obviously Joshua Chamberlain from my hometown.
Yeah.
Big fan of Civil War history.
Yeah.
I found out about the 3rd Maine through an old bookstore that was in Freeport called the 20th Maine Bookstore. It was great
Oh,
shop.
really?
Since
Is that still a
closed.
thing? No.
I know it sucks. But nobody reads books anymore. It's all online.
Yeah.
So I know I read books. I'm a nerd. But so joined then. As a kid, when you join a unit like this, there are certain rules and regulations you have to follow.
Oh yeah.
My first battle reenactment, I was too young to carry a musket. It was in Virginia. They didn't allow 14-year-olds. Now, it was funny. I played drums in school, but I never played the drums in the 3rd Maine. I was a runner. They had me out there running around, passing messages from colonels and generals and stuff on horseback. Did you
ever get like shot as a kid, like in one of these reenactments?
Shot?
Like did you die in any of these reenactments?
Oh yeah, I'll always die. Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. Oh sure, you gotta die. You
Like
gotta
kids die in reenactments
for sure.
too.
Yeah,
Wow.
for sure. Yeah, for sure. Well, remember, I was reenacting a soldier. I was out there running around. But no.
Yeah. Wow.
In terms of what we do locally, again, it was learning, the drill, getting your kit together, figuring out how to set up a tent. What am I going to pack for a weekend to make sure I'm, have what I need for the weekend, and right food, and make sure I've got water and all that stuff.
And not to nerd out too much, but did you guys all have half wedges in terms of your tents?
So great question. We in the 3rd Maine, we allow you to either have a wedge tent, an A tent, or a dog tent, so you can have either.
Up tent.
So the 3rd Maine soldier, for the most part, was using a dog tent in the field. They used A tents on the peninsula in the campaign of '62. The 3rd Maine didn't do as much. They were with the Army of the Potomac. The Army of the Potomac didn't do a whole lot of like walking around in the woods. They were moving as an army with a wagon train. So they had lots of equipment and a lot of gear. In fact, especially during the McClellan years, they had all sorts of stuff.
Yep.
So not too bad, but a dog tent is certainly, that's what I'll be in this weekend. Even as an officer, I'll be in a dog tent. I'm portraying a mid-war officer. I wouldn't have had a wagon train near me at that time. I would have had my dog tent on my knapsack and would have carried it just like a soldier would have. And that's how I'll camp this weekend.
Nice.
So again, depends. I think that, when someone joins the unit, it really depends on kind of where they're at. If it's a, father and a son joining together, then, get an A tent. And that way you guys can have one tent, stay together in the tent. That's fine. Again, we try to be as inclusive as possible and welcome people in. And then, as we go forward, nudge them towards more authenticity.
Yep.
Or towards a particular portrayal they want to do for a particular event.
Right.
If it's a super, we call them hardcore, but a super authentic event somewhere that has very strict guidelines, okay, here's the deal. And the people that want to do that can. The ones that don't have to.
Sure.
If we're doing a living history on the mall in Brunswick, for example, it's, you can do whatever you want.
Sure. It's a little less strict, a little more lenient.
For sure.
Yeah. Because I understand that there were the like half wedges, where it's like you had half the tent, your tent mate had half the tent.
It's called the shelter half. Yeah.
Shelter half. That's the name for it. Thank you.
It's exactly right. It's a piece of canvas, buttons across the top. And what would happen is 2 soldiers would button them together, and that would create a dog tent. So either you'd set it up as a half or set it up as a shelter, as a full tent. Absolutely. A couple sticks that either stick together, or a musket inverted in the ground with a bayonet.
Yep.
With a string between the two, with how you'd hold the tent up.
And there's home.
That would keep you dry. I'll be honest with you, unless it's going to rain, I don't even set up canvas. If it's best just to sleep out under the stars, wrap a blanket over your head, and just sleep out there.
Call it good.
It's a lot easier. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been coming up with I've been trying to come up with a living history plan myself as a registered Maine guide, where I want to go I call it a living traditions trip.
Okay.
And it's like this, and I'm trying to make it through making it through the details, and I unfortunately do not have a lot of the details, but I want to portray a registered Maine guide from the 1890s.
Oh, that's super cool.
Right. Fly Rod Crosby was the first.
Okay.
Right. And she was, I think she was 1897 was when the first registered Maine guide. I think they registered 2,000 of that year. And obviously what they were doing is a little different than what we do now, right?
Sure.
So I want to create this living history thing that has a registered Maine guide from that time period,
cool.
using all of that gear.
That's cool.
And using all the techniques. Now, this is not a trip for somebody. I was telling my last podcast guest, this is not a trip for somebody who's climbed Denali. This is not a trip for your hardcore outdoorsman who's done it all and seen it all.
Right.
This is a trip for people who come to Maine and they want like an authentic outdoor experience without the high stakes of like being in the Carabasset Valley for a week.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. What a cool idea. That's exactly what we do, by the way. We come up with like an impression. You're doing an impression.
An impression of a registered Maine
period
guide.
or a time or a thing or a place, and then you just you do the impression of what that would have been.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
So the unique problem I came up with, right, is registered Maine guides used to make lean-tos out of sticks and branches and pine boughs, and that's not LNT, right? That's not leave no trace, right? That's not what we advocate for in the outdoor community anymore. So my thought process was, well, how do I get around this? And so I'm like, do a little bit of consulting with Frank.
Sure.
And he's like, have you heard of a shelter half?
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute, that's it.
That's perfect.
You know what I mean? Because now it's not, you're not destroying the environment.
That's right.
You have a shelter.
Yep.
And it's kind of like it's creative liberty, right? Because you have to balance the historical immersion, right? Because if I'm in like a wool outfit, wool trousers, got the nice Stetson on, and I go sleep in an Ozark trail, you've completely ruined the immersion.
Sure.
Right. So the shelter half, I'm like, this is the perfect medium.
That's perfect.
First thing I'm gonna order, probably as soon as possible, is a shelter half.
Do it. I recommend you get both halves, because if it rains, you're going to want the second half. For sure.
Yeah, probably so. And I was looking at not to get into it too much. We can definitely chat after the podcast. Regimental quartermaster?
Yeah, sure. Regimental quartermaster. So there's kind of like tiers. Regimental quartermaster is good. Like I would put it in the good, better, best. It's good, borderline better.
Yep.
S&S Sutler is leaning in the best category. NJ Sakella, and then again individual makers, Connor Timoni. They're top tier makers that are kind of in the best category.
Yeah, but you gotta really
fork out, right. So regimental quartermaster is good. Again, S&S Sutler is another really good one. There's some out there. Fall Creek has been around forever. Fall Creek Sutler is out of Indiana. Again, great website. You can go through. You can pick sizes. You can ask questions. You call the guy. They'll answer. They'll talk to you about this is what I'm trying to do. This is the impression I want. How should I size this?
Yep.
One thing that's tricky about trousers is pants aren't worn where we wear modern pants. We wear modern pants well below the belly button. Now they're worn right at the waist, at the belly button line.
Yep.
So you have to measure for that, which is that's the biggest trick. Someone say I'm a size 30. I'm like, they're not a size 30.
No, you're not.
You're going to be a little bigger than that.
Yep.
So yeah, interesting there too. But yeah, Sutlers are great. Regimental quartermaster, again, a really good one. And it all, again, it really depends on what's your journey. What are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to do? If you're trying to put on the most authentic uniform ever, you can do that. It's going to cost you money.
It's not going to be cheap.
It's going to be significantly. And it's all. And both of these hats that are in front of me right now are completely handmade. From soup to nuts, handmade.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They cut the brim out of a piece of leather. They put everything together. Everything is handmade.
Oh yeah, for sure. So when joining the 3rd Maine, what do hopeful reenactors need to know?
One, they need to know, again, where to get things and what to get. And we provide all of that. They need to have a general understanding of fieldcraft. They have some if they're going to camp out with us, they have having camped out before helps. If you've never camped out before, it could be a long night, mosquitoes and spiders and bugs. It's you're being outside.
Yeah, how do you deal with that?
You just roll over, I just honestly, the best thing for mosquitoes is I just put my wool blanket over my head.
Yeah, that's about all you can do.
We call it the burrito. So we wrap up. They have these gum blankets. They're rubberized on one side, canvas on the other.
Ugh.
And you take that keeps you dry, and you take your wool blanket, just roll over like a burrito, and just roll up in a sack, and you're fine. So that's one thing. Have you ever cooked over an open fire before? Or have you ever, do you know how to start a fire? Like those are basic things that are good to learn. You don't need to know them to be a reenactor, but it helps.
Yep.
'Cause we're in the field. We're in the field.
That's what you're doing.
Yeah. The other thing is being able to, be physically fit enough to be able to walk. And we do a lot of walking. We do a lot of standing. We do a lot of marching. Not anything like the soldiers actually did. I'm a big guy, but you don't have to be, in peak physical condition, but you have to be able to handle that and carry weight, carry a musket. Muskets are heavy. They weigh about 13 pounds. So, it's you got a lot of weight. You're slugging around. So that's another piece too. That's important. And I think the last piece is, understanding what are you trying to get out of this hobby? Like, why are you joining it? If you're joining it to, to experience history, and that's great. Like that's one piece. If you're like, I just need something to do with a bunch of guys or a bunch of people and I'm looking to have some fun. If you're someone who is, looking for one very particular experience in this, ask.
Yeah.
Because
just make sure that's...
We may not do that thing, right?
Yeah.
And we do a lot, but we may not do the thing you're looking for. Yep. So I think that's a big piece there too. If you don't know, ask. Like that's the other thing. If you don't know, ask. Reenactors, I love talking to people. I've been talking to people about reenacting, for as long as I can remember. A lot of it has to do with, who are you as a person and what excites you about history. And if, in whatever amount of time we've been talking here, it's very clear that you're into history.
Oh yeah.
You like talking to people, like you check a lot of the boxes. Like, yeah, you'd be a great reenactor. You'd enjoy this. Other people I meet that are, oh boy, there are bugs out there. I can't do bugs. Like this is probably not the hobby for you.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
not.
And that's okay.
Yep.
That's okay.
Yep. So is there like a boot camp process for reenactors?
Yeah. So
boot camp process.
So we do an annual camp of instruction every year. So every year we get everybody together. There's no public invited. If they're new members, they're invited. Anybody that's curious about reenacting or trying it are invited, but we don't put on a show. There's no public demonstration.
Yeah.
And we literally train exactly the way they train. So in front of me here, I've got a copy of the 1857 Army Regulations book. We use Casey's Infantry Tactics. That's a book that we use with all of our training, and we train our soldiers, our reenactors, the exact same way that they were trained when they first joined the Army in 1861 or 1862. Do
you deal with any complications where, like, I don't know how, like, ruthless you are in terms of, like, drill sergeanting. Like, you want to keep it as historically accurate as possible. You also don't want to, like, somebody makes a mistake or, like, drops a musket and you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah. You have to understand that the instructors, the officers, the sergeants, even most of the officers, in fact, many of the colonels, were not regular Army soldiers.
Right.
They were volunteers. Joshua Chamberlain was a professor.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have been screaming and yelling at people necessarily, right? And, if he's frustrated, maybe. So no, a little different. It's not like Paris Island. It's not.
Okay, so you're not going in there like
Full Metal Jacket.
They're not going to come in there and like yell at you or like it's not an intimidating.
The only time I'm going to yell at you is if you're being unsafe or if I need you to get in a position to attack an enemy because we're getting flanked, which is part of the role, right? Like that would be the only time you get yelled at by me. By our sergeants, maybe if you're being unsafe, maybe if we've told you to put your foot up in a certain position so that you're not going to fire the musket in someone's ear, something like that. But no, none of that at all.
Okay.
It's instructional. That's the idea is we instruct, we teach, we're teachers by nature, all of us, and we want to teach you how to safely handle your musket. Another
time I've seen you yell at somebody, there was a group of 3 ladies, but one of them wasn't a lady.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So that was actually where we're going to Chesterfield.
Yeah, there was actually a guy in a blouse.
We had one of my privates get dressed up in a dress, and he was hiding in this like shack that was along the roadway we were marching on, and so I had to yell at him. We didn't execute him. We didn't put him under the gun. We sent him for a court martial. That was good. I followed the rules. But we have a little bit of fun, and I think that's the other thing too is that you have to have fun with this thing. Great campfire stories. Great, little inside jokes and practical jokes. One of my favorites, we were just at Gettysburg, and it's 104 degrees. It was during this heat wave. We're all just dying from heat. And this crazy thunderstorm rolls through, like violent thunderstorm.
Oh, yeah, I'm not surprised.
And as it rolls through, we're all there, and the wind is just whipping. We have this one piece of canvas that we have as a fly that we had in the middle of our street just to keep everybody cool. And it's literally gonna blow away. So we had a private or a soldier on every single one of the posts, and they're hanging on to it. And the wind is whipping, and the rain is just smacking us in the face. And our first sergeant, who's a big singer, he likes to sing, he plays his guitar and sings songs, just starts singing a sea shanty. I can't remember which one. Roll the old chariots are wrong. I think, roll the old chariots. A little bit of rain wouldn't do us any harm. And the guys just start singing spontaneously. So here we are, these nut jobs from Maine. We've been baking in the sun for 72 hours. We are getting soaked. My tent is flat. Everything I own is wet. It's just crazy. And we're sitting there and we're singing sea shanties.
Just the absurdity of the situation.
Just the absurdity of the situation, having fun. And I'll tell you what, those are the moments that when you get done with an event, you're like, that was really cool.
Yep. What are your most memorable experiences? Because I remember you saying you have a lot of really good stories.
Yeah.
What is the most, if you had to choose one, what is the most memorable story, other than that one, because that one was incredible, reenacting with the third?
That's a good question. The story I'll tell is, because I have time to tell it, we were reenacting the Battle of Antietam, and we were portraying a very particular unit, the 4th Rhode Island at the time.
So it wasn't did Maine participate in Antietam?
All sorts of Maine regiments. The 20th Maine was at Antietam. It was their first. It was their first battle. Lots of Maine regiments were. The 3rd actually was not. They were manning a signal station downriver. So they actually missed that battle. It's the only battle that the Army of Potomac the 3rd did not fight in. Anyway, we were portraying the 4th Rhode Island. And we're on a farm that literally has the Antietam Creek running through it. It's right next to the battlefield. So it was right there in the same area. And it was a full immersion event. The 4th Rhode Island did not have any tents. They had lost their tents 3 months before, had not been replaced, so we weren't allowed to have any tents. So we had just a blanket roll on our back, and that was it. They issued us what we had for food all weekend. I was an officer. Obviously, I had a company under my command, and I was responsible for a guard mount detail between 2 a.m. and 3:30 a.m. So my responsibility was being up and making sure that I had privates to be out there to be picking up. The Confederates were right across the creek from us. You could hear them. They were shooting at us and hollering at us and everything else. So it was cool, and it was fully immersive, and you're tired and exhausted. Well, the next day we had the scenario where we do what the 4th Rhode Island did, which was cross the creek. So we all get in line and we go across the creek. Well, they said that it was going to be about knee deep, a little bit above the shin. They said, okay, fair enough. So I wore my officer's boots, and my officer's boots come right about to the knee line. I'm like, okay, this is okay. Maybe I'll get a little water inside, but they'll be okay.
Whatever.
Better than Brogan's.
Yeah.
BS, man. That water was, too easily to the belly button. We were, so we're holding up all of our, soldiers are holding up all their traps, keep their powder dry. They're walking across these big slippery rocks underneath. My superior officer fell, broke 2 ribs as he fell into the water. He's an old Marine, so he went through it no problem. Got up on the other side. He's sitting there, gasping for air. I get up through, and that water fills in my boots. And my favorite was we get on the other side. We fight because we're in combat this whole time. We get across. We're fighting across, and we finally drive the enemy away from the creek. And I'm there on the side of every step I'm taking, water's just pumping out of my boots every step. And I'm like, all right, so I need some help. So I try to take them off. I don't know if you've ever tried to take a boot off. It's been wet. It's impossible. It was stupid. It was really, really dumb.
Yep.
And for an experienced reenactor, it was a dumb move. So I'm there, and I get these 2 privates over here. I got two young kids. They're 17, 18 years old, whatever. They're just yarding on these boots, trying to pull them off. And one pulls them off, and the boot goes flying. It hits the same officer that got hit in the chest with the broken ribs earlier. He gets hit with the boot. Water's everywhere. We're out in the field. We're like, okay, this is going to be great. So we're having a great weekend. We're all laughing at me, and we go into this cornfield. The officer falls again, the same guy who had broken the ribs.
Oh, come on.
He fell in the cornfield and bruised his face all up. And I'm out there, so we're dragging his ass back, and we're just, it's just this like comedy of errors. Just we're out there to this event, and man, I've never had more fun. Never had more fun.
Yep.
Really, really cool experience. You felt it to whatever extent that you can. In reliving history, you could feel it.
Yep.
For sure. So that was probably my favorite overall experience. We've had some other crazy things happen. I've had a pistol pointed at my chest by someone. It wasn't loaded, I guess. I hope not, thank God. But a Confederate reenactor pointed a pistol at my chest thinking that we had stolen his flag. We hadn't. A member of the general public had taken it as a joke, but he thought that we had taken it, so he's there with a pistol to my chest. And I think I don't know, I might have been 20. I was 18, 19 years old maybe. It was crazy.
That's a little intense.
We've had some moments for sure, but by and large, all really, really fun stories. Campfires are the best. Campfires, if you're thinking about reenacting, spending a campfire around a bunch of people that know a ton about history, that'll tell stories, and not just Civil War, but all history, and a chance to really spend a great night around a campfire with a bunch of really good people. It's the best. It's absolutely the best.
So I got to ask, because I know this is a crazy offshoot, but I'm so curious because you've gone against the Confederates. What is it like hearing the rebel yell?
The rebel yell, the first time you hear it, when it's done, especially with a large group, is truly terrifying. It is truly a terrifying shrill. The biggest thing that I've felt is when you feel the concussion of artillery, because you can't, obviously you're never getting shelled, but when artillery fire, especially in all at once in a volley fire, it will push air and it literally sweeps across you with this heat and smell smoke and everything else. So you feel that, and if you feel that, then you hear this scream coming at you. It's almost as if you feel your body being pushed. You're like, okay, I'm being pushed by something, and it's hard to, I'm not trying to sound corny here. It really is. It's a surreal feeling. And when they come over a crest of a hill, or when they're coming at you at the full charge, full throat, and that Confederate flag is flying and they're screaming, it's terrifying. I mean, you again, little tastes of, wow, this is terrifying. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
Biggest charge is one of our favorites. We'll be on the wall, and they're coming at you wave after wave after wave, and they're just melting in front of you and screaming, and cannons are everywhere. And we were at the angle one year for the 160th, and the cannon was literally, I don't know, from me to the door, so 2.5 feet away from me, and that thing just roaring off shots, and I'm shaking, and you sit there and you go, okay, this is, again, you get a taste. Like I keep going, this is a taste of what it might have been like. And
yep.
And those moments, man, they really stick with you for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So why do you think people find living history so enthralling? I think this is a great question to end it on. Because living history is like I feel like living history expresses itself in so many different ways, sure. Right? So I'm a part of a group called the Portland Reavers, right? Boohurt group, like to dress in armor
yep.
and fight using tactics. I mean, using legitimate, historically accurate armor, historically accurate swords and axes, right? And bring that level of living history. I know that Maine has World War II reenactors as well.
Yeah, World War II. We have one of our members there's at a Vietnam event this weekend.
Oh, wow.
Down in Newville, Pennsylvania.
Yep.
So they do all eras.
And I know they've gone everywhere from like World War I all the way to Desert Storm, which is a little like, okay, those guys are still alive. Like maybe wait a little bit. Like don't reenact it when the guys are right there.
I have some personal opinions on that, but I'll leave those to myself.
Okay, fair enough.
But yeah, it's everything.
Yep.
Well, let me ask you. We'll turn it back on you for a second. What is it that got you into wanting to be like, I'm going to swing a period axe at a buddy wearing armor? Like, what was it that said like that's going to be cool for me?
For me, it was also, I will say I do hate axes. I got hit in the head with a halberd once, and my helmet spun around.
That's crazy.
Like the guy and I locked up, and he goes, "All right, Piers, what do we do now?" And I'm just starting out. I'm like, I don't know. And he just takes it back and clocks me, and my helmet goes whoop around. So I avoid axes like the plague. I'm more of a sword guy. But what it was the energy, right? The energy surrounding it, and the energy of like. Because I saw it in a bar
Sure.
in Biddeford, right?
Cool.
Bandit Brewing, and they had like these guys in armor, and it was this one.
Drinking and axes sounds like a.
Oh, it's great!
It's like a terrible combination.
Oh yeah, it's
awesome.
an awful combination.
Yeah, awesome.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing the axes are blunted, right?
Fair.
And it was this long sword fight.
That's
And I remember these two going at it with the long swords, and I remember they clashed their swords together, and there's this giant spark.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, I gotta try that. So I think it's the energy, but then also I love, like I said to you earlier, I love acting. My mom always makes fun of me because whenever I get into a job, I really like wearing the uniform, right?
Sure.
She's like, oh, look, you got a costume, right? And I guess I just need to be honest with myself and saying that like, I feel more comfortable in a costume sometimes than I do in my own street clothes. I just feel more aligned with these characters that I'm portraying. And acting is something that I stifled a long time ago just because the writing was on the wall, and being an actor was just... It's a hard route to go.
Sure.
But that always stuck with me. And I always think that living history, historical reenactments, I think that being able to interact with the public as somebody who's living in a different time period, a completely immersive experience, always really stuck, deep within my soul. Yeah, let's just say that, my soul.
If I were to distill everything that you just said, it's you got to experience history. You get to experience the thing that you're interested in.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't do that with history. It's gone. It's over. It's a movie or it's a film or it's a book.
Yep. To quote Griffin Williamsburg, you cannot stand in the same river twice.
But that's exactly right. And living history lets you stand in a standing body of water that will never move, right?
Yeah.
It lets you be there.
Yep.
And that's exactly right. For everybody, it's a little different.
Yep.
For me, it's less of the acting. I'm a terrible actor. But I know the history and I know the drill, and I I feel as if you could stick me in 1861 right now and lead an infantry company, I would be able to drill them the same way they know how to drill.
Right.
For me, that's super cool. Like for Matt, that's interesting.
Yep.
But the point is that I get to live it. I'm taking it from a book, I'm taking it from a page or from a movie or from a
classroom,
whatever, a song or a classroom, and taking it and actually getting to experience it, man. And for anybody that has that, even that twinge of interest in it, try it because it's super cool.
Okay, I'm sold.
It is, and it's the other piece is, it's an awesome thing to join in a day and age where we are so removed from one another. We're on a screen, or we're texting, or we're calling, or we're on social media. We're not together the way that humans were originally supposed to be together. The pub culture of the 1900s, where it's not just about the drinking; it's about going after work and talking with everybody in your community. Those days are gone. This is a chance for you to have a sense of community. This has truly been a second family for me. The officers, the captain that was the captain when I joined, is still one of my very, very close friends, a mentor, someone who helped raise me as a man and become a better person. So much more than just playing war. So much more than just putting on a costume or a uniform. It's a very, very, very different thing. So if you're curious in it out there, or certainly I'm gonna sell you got to come. But but anybody that's thinking about this, or like, oh, that'd be really cool to try out, strongest recommendation is to come try it.
Okay. Yep.
It's a lot of fun.
Cool. That's just a fantastic way to end this podcast. But we're not done yet. So I like to end my podcast with a bit of a funny question.
Okay.
Just to, kind of keep the vibes high and make sure that, it ends on a good note, because I've had some crazy endings.
Okay.
But I guess the funniest question I can ask is a very simple one. And you kind of answered it with a comedy of errors, but I'm sure you have another story somewhere. What is the absolute funniest, most ridiculous thing that you've seen on a battlefield during a reenactment?
There was I was young. This was years ago. Might have been 2001, 2002. And there was a officer that was supposed to lead a charge, and he was not a reenactor. He was an actor of some sort that was portraying a role. And I can't remember if it was Phil Sheridan. It might have been Phil Sheridan at the Battle of Cedar Creek. And he gets off his horse, and he kind of trips getting off his horse because he didn't really know what the hell he was doing.
Uh-oh.
And he comes out in front of the men, and he draws his sword very awkwardly. You could tell. You just tell when people aren't used to the gear. And he draws his sword awkwardly, and he says, men of the army, the whatever, the valley, follow me. And he, turns around. And as he turns around, I kid you not, pants come right down, and he is absolutely 100% bare ass in front. There might have been 6,000 of us in that line, and the roar of laughter was just like. But the guy had no idea. I don't know if he didn't notice. I don't know if he was just to him. I have no idea. It wasn't until he took 2 or 3 steps when then you see him start reaching down to grab the pants with the sword in his hand. So he's got this sword and he's got his hand. He's trying to pull his pants up, and he's trying to lead this charge, and not a soul. I mean, not a man of the 6,000 of us or whatever moves, because we can't. We're just literally dying laughing at this guy. And he finally gets his pants yarded up. He turns around. He kind of looks at us. We're like, oh, okay, now we'll go. Then we got to this charge. But I think getting mooned by my superior officer was probably one of the funniest stories we've ever seen. And I don't know how many spectators were there. I mean, it's probably 5,000, 6,000 people.
The public were watching.
Oh, of course. Yeah, thousands of people. I mean, this is again, you can't make this up. It was absolutely incredible. And I don't know why he wasn't wearing. I have no idea. I don't know. Getting into the whole story, it's crazy. But that was certainly one of the funniest. The other funny one, a local one. It's a real quick story. Was we did a tactical event, and I was 17. I think I was 17 years old. I was just a kid, maybe 16. And my file mate, my pard, the guy I was with in the skirmish line, was in his 60s, and a really nice guy, but he was an old curmudgeon, an old French-Canadian guy from Lewiston, and named Ray Remillard, I'll never forget. And Ray and I were out there, and we're walking along, and Ray walks and loses a boot in the mud. So he sits down, he's trying to get his boot out of the mud. Then he goes another step, loses his other boot in the mud.
Yep.
So I'm there, and I'm helping him, trying to pull his boots out of the
that
mud.
Black mud, man.
He's just, the stream of obscenities. Just nonstop. We get back to camp, and he's sitting there, and we're helping him put his boots back on. And he goes, yes, Captain, should have come out here and scouted this ground. How come he didn't do that? Of course, my mother died last year, and that was really hard. And I'm like, what the hell is happening? So I get back to camp, and we're telling the story around the campfire, and I'm just this kid, like, reciting the story. And it was a mother. He goes, well, yeah. He goes, if the captain was taking care of me like my mother would have, we would have been just fine. And I'll never forget Ray saying that line. And man, just this poor 60-year-old guy, fat guy trying to like lean over, put his boots just soaked in mud. Yeah, incredible. So little moments like that for sure. But I think the bare ass general is probably the winner. But
the bare ass general.
Yeah, but a couple other interesting ones there too.
That's perfect. That is absolute cinema right there. Absolute cinema. So. We talked about a lot, Matt, and I'm super thankful that you made it down here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for talking about reenacting.
Yep.
We have a great website, thirdmaine.org, spelled out. And again, I'm sure you'll share all this stuff. But,
easy.
Our Facebook page is the best way to reach us. If you're on Facebook, we're very active on there. You can find out all of our events. But encourage you to come check us out. We'd love to have people come try us out, or certainly come see us at events and let us know. Come ask questions, let us know you heard us here. Would love to do that, but thank you for the opportunity. This means so much to us because it gives us a chance to talk about what we do in a great setting. So thank you.
You'll get me. I'll probably go to an event or two. I have to now. It's just kind of a requirement.
You already got the hat. We just got to put a 3 on there. You'll be all right.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I want to take the 20 off, but maybe you'll see me in a Hardy hat.
All right.
Oh yeah, probably the Hardy hat. Is there any way that I could get a Hardy hat going, or
we could talk about it. You're really working me on this one. We'll have to check and see.
It's the brim up, man. I'm sorry.
Don't worry. We have plenty of guys that I have one. They're great. So
okay, great.
For a parade, you could do a parade. You can wear the Hardy hat.
Oh yeah, let's make that happen.
I'll meet you halfway there.
All right, cool. Thanks, great. All right, thank you so much, Matt. Thank you everybody so much for listening. Thank you, Tyrone, for being in here for my first episode, or for his first episode, not mine. I've done a few of these now. Definitely see you guys next time with our next guest. And as always, stay weird, Portland.